If you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with Minecraft, and if you're familiar with Minecraft, you may have heard of Minecraft Hardcore. Now I like challenges, but there are at least two problems. First, I only play on Bedrock Edition, and there is no official hardcore mode on Bedrock. Fortunately, I can still set the difficulty to hard, and just have the self-control to not play in the world after I die. Second, hostile mobs terrify me. It's the reason I've only played on Peaceful for the past 4.5 years. I still think Peaceful mode is great, and I'll probably continue to play it for as long as Minecraft exists. But I feel like I need a change. I love making crop farms, but I've always just used them to get emeralds from villagers to turn into other things. I've never been that worried about having a stable food source, or trying to recover from damage. Those are both non-issues in Peaceful. So how can I get a taste of the hardcore experience without the spiders and creepers? Turn off mob spawning. At least, that's the easiest answer I could find. And I am all about minimal effort. This does unfortunately mean I won't be able to get steak or wool for beds, and I have to see this. But hey, I can always do crop farms, and maybe I'll find a village I can permanently borrow some beds from. It's not like the villagers will need them. They won't exist. Also, yeah, technically cheats are enabled, but I'm not going to cheat other than turning off mob spawning. That would kind of defeat the purpose of what I'm trying to do here, which is to challenge myself. But what will I aim for? Without mobs, I won't be able to get to the end. Fortunately, I am accustomed to this reality from years of playing exclusively Peaceful mode where I am unable to get to the end. Instead, my goal will be full netherite armor, and at least one of each netherite tool. I might not be able to bedbind the netherite unless I find a ton of villages or cobwebs I can turn into wool, but it is something to aim for. I'll also be switching natural regeneration off, because if I'm going to try hardcore, I might as well do ultra hardcore. Besides, I won't be able to trade gold with piglins, so making golden apples will give me some use for the item. And again, this is hardcore, so if I die, that's it. I won't be playing in this world anymore. Additionally, I know for a fact that I am not the only person interested in this style of play. I have seen multiple requests for peaceful hardcore mods. Most of them were older, and obviously for Java, but I still believe we exist. I mean, I exist. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Prior to starting recording, I tried to determine what the best food source would be. As far as I can tell, cooked salmon is the best renewable food source I can get without mobs. Unfortunately, that requires a fishing rod, and since I have no way of getting string without first finding a mine shaft or some other structure, I'd have to settle for the second best food source, bread. This, of course, means starting a wheat farm. So, after punching down the nearest acacia tree, I started collecting seeds, and headed for the greener, more farming-friendly biome nearby. As it turns out, there were 2 convenient ponds for hydrating farmland, so I crafted a wooden hoe and started my farm because I had no idea how long I would last without food, and I figured the sooner I got those seeds in the ground, the better. While the seeds grew, I tried to get some more sticks and saplings from the tree I had chopped down, and replanted one of the saplings before heading back to my base. It was at this time that I remembered that surrounding farmland accelerates crop growth, so I tilled more of the surrounding dirt blocks. Still waiting for the crops to grow, I grabbed some nearby sugarcane and examined a surface cave. It had iron, and appeared to go deep, so I would definitely be back. But first I needed to craft a wooden pickaxe. In retrospect, I could have made another crafting table using the wood in my inventory, but I have this thing where if I know I've already made a crafting table and it's kind of nearby, I'll just go and use that one. So that's how I ended up on my way back to my base, only to be distracted by a cornflower. It was blue, so I needed it. Once I was back, I planted the cornflower, planted the sugarcane, gathered more seeds, and discovered I had set down a few chunks from a village. And what a village it was! Ravines, hay bales, I'd have bread for days, beetroot, carrots, beds, emeralds, books. I just remembered leather is going to be difficult to get. Potatoes! Pumpkin. With the sun setting, I decided to use one of the beds and skip to the next day. I then grabbed that bed since no one else would need it and headed back to base. Why not live in the village? Because abandoned villages kinda creep me out. And since this one didn't have any cobwebs, it feels like it was abandoned more recently than your typical abandoned village. Granted, this situation only exists because I have spawning turned off, but it still creeps me out. Thanks to the village, I had amassed enough goods to justify making a barrel, and enough crops to extend my farm. I converted the hay bales into bread, a little less than I was expecting, but still a lot. I planted down some saplings, and the pumpkin seeds. I finally crafted my wood pickaxe, and gathered enough stone for a pick, a shovel, and a furnace. Finally, we're in business. I got to work clearing the dirt above the clay in the smaller pond, and then started gathering the clay. A flower pot for my cornflower would be nice, or maybe I'll finally use brick in my builds. I always procrastinate making my house. I would need a bucket to finish renovating the ponds, so I went back and, careful not to fall off the edge, gathered the iron I had seen in the surface cave. I took this opportunity to see just how far it went, but I halted once I reached a cave. I would have to return with more torches. On my way out, I covered the pit with dirt to avoid any gravity-related misfortunes, and slept again. When I awoke, I realized I was out of wood, so I punched the nearest oak until I could get enough wood to make sticks for a stone axe. The axe made the rest of the job much faster. After looking around, I realized that the river might be a good way to travel until I had enough sugarcane for maps. Since it would be a while until the saplings grew, I chopped down another acacia tree and made an acacia boat. I don't know that I've ever made this specific boat before. It was at this point that I realized I should probably eat something, so I ate the very first loaf of bread. And then the second, because that wasn't enough apparently. I then noticed that my wheat still hadn't matured. Sure am glad I found that village. Having spent enough time worrying about what might have been, I crafted a bucket and continued expanding the smaller pond. Once I was satisfied, I moved my wheat so that they would be surrounded by farmland and thus grow more quickly. And I ended the day by gathering more seeds. Next morning, I gathered more acacia and oak from the saplings I had planted. I even got my first apple for this world. I then planted down those saplings, smelted more charcoal, and tended the farm. At this point it started to rain, and I wished I had a fishing rod. Unfortunately, wishes do not make fishing rods. I returned to the village to grab another bed in preparation for exploring to see if I could find string or anything else to advance my goals. After returning, I used beetroot to dye the second bed and made some more bread. I then realized that there was clay in the larger pond, too. This meant that I would have to enlarge the pond, which meant I would have to rearrange the farm again. This is also the point at which I took my first damage. I was so mad. I had told myself I was going to be careful, and how do I get damage? From not paying attention to my air. 2 hearts down, and I didn't have all the materials for golden apples or suspicious stew. At least I found iron at the bottom of the larger pond. I expanded the pond some more, and then slept the rain away. I finished collecting the clay from the larger pond. I would need to rethink my farm, what was left of it anyway. I spent the rest of the day gathering wood. Until recently, I usually listened to something else while I played Minecraft, like music, a TV show, whatever. So when I heard this noise, I thought, that sounded weird. Are my headphones dying? Or is that one of those creepy cave sounds I see people talking about all the time? And sure enough, there was a cave nearby. Just like the village, this has been behind my base this entire time. How do I keep not noticing these things? It was day 6. I had a stack of torches. I was ready to go on an adventure. So, after double-checking my inventory, I hopped into my boat and headed up the river, and found a new tree, birch. Again, I don't know what materials I will use for my house, but I like to gather everything I can. Having options is nice. Unfortunately, the birch tree I chopped down only gave me 1 sapling. I like to replant every tree I chop down, and I hate chopping down trees that are connected because then you have to get all of them, so I'd have to wait for another opportunity to get birch saplings. While looking for another single birch I could chop down, I discovered a lake of sorts and just kind of wandered around. This is why I like to make maps, because I get distracted very easily, which means I get lost very easily. But I thought, it's fine. This terrain is so different, I'll easily find my way home. So I continued on, and found a plains, which led to an extreme hills, where I found not 1, but 2 4-block-high sugar canes. And of course I had to climb the mountain, which led to spruce trees, where I found a pumpkin patch, and dandelions, which led to a desert. At least I would know where to go to get glass for my builds. Also cactus. I'd have to be more careful around these with regeneration turned off. At this point, I returned to the spruce trees, fully intending to go back home through the plains once I had a spruce sapling to take with me. But then I saw flowers. Listen, the specific suspicious stew I would need to regain the 2 hearts I lost from forgetting to breathe required oxeye daisies. My reasons were valid. But then I saw more flowers. However, it was dark, so gathering more would have to wait until morning. So I grabbed more daisies, roses, and on the other side of the flower field was another village. I snagged the cyan beds, all the loot from the chests, a flower pot, the bell, a smithing table. That would save me 2 pieces of iron. This glazed terracotta. I'm not confident I know how to build with this, but that's not going to stop me from grabbing it. And sea pickles. Having grabbed everything I cared about, I headed home in the rain. On the way, I found another 4-block-tall sugarcane and a ruined portal. In the chest, I found a golden chest plate, sword and axe, a fire charge, flint and steel, and gold nuggets. I opted to leave behind the flint and steel, as well as some clay and sugarcane. The sword and axe may have been useless, but they were shiny trophies to remind me of this adventure. I snagged a bucket of lava, and then headed home for real this time. Once I reached the savannah, I slept through the rain. With the skies once again clear, I finished making my way home. I admired my shiny treasures, and made a second barrel to store them in. I also placed the sea pickles in the bottom of the pond. It seemed the most sensible place. And I ended the day with some farming. Thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing so that you can be sure to catch the next installment. And if you didn't enjoy the video, your patience and persistence are to be commended. Thank you. But that being said, if you didn't like the video, you probably shouldn't hit the subscribe button, since that would mean you'd see more videos just like this one. Morally, I cannot encourage you to do things that will cause you emotional or mental discomfort. But I also can't stop you. Until next time, take care.